This is a video that talks all about the meals that we've eaten for the last couple of weeks, and this is part 4 in a series that we had started at the beginning of January 2025. So make sure if you like this kind of video, you're checking out the other videos and subscribe to our channel. If you're just meeting me, my name is Amy Cross, and this is the Cross Legacy, where I teach you how to save money on groceries. And one of those ways is by reducing your food waste, especially your produce. I'm the best-selling author of the Zero Waste Produce Guide, and I've even had a TED Talk on the subject. Now we're going to start this video off right where we ended the last video, which was on Super Bowl Sunday, and we were eating taco salads, but we hadn't been to the grocery store in over a month at this point. Normally I go grocery shopping once every 3 weeks, and because we had snow last week, we actually pushed that out another week. So if you would like to see the video on my grocery haul, we have that up already on YouTube. So we went grocery shopping and got all new fresh produce and everything that will lead us for the next 3 to 4 weeks. But when I go grocery shopping, most often I will pick up something that is super easy for dinner, and I got a rotisserie chicken. Now we are about 80% organic and 20% I'm okay with getting something that's a little bit easier on a busy night. So I'm okay with getting a rotisserie chicken and making that. And honestly, after filming all day and going grocery shopping, when I sat down to eat, I forgot to take a picture until I was like almost done. So in the last 2 weeks, I've had 4 speaking events and had been on TV, and Mike had been sick and I had been trying to stay away from him. I have been drinking a lot of fire cider and also some jade citrus mint tea that's from that, store that has the green aprons. But after having so much going on the last couple weeks, that cold finally caught up to me. So for this night, we ended up just pulling something out of the freezer, which was Tater Tot Casserole that I had made in January. We just used it again for another meal straight out of the freezer. For dinner, I really wanted some ramen with some homemade broth and all of the veggies just to kind of comfort the soul and feed me all the nutrients I could get. But Mike kind of wanted me to make 𝐂𝐻𝐿, so I ended up making ramen for dinner, and while I was cutting those vegetables and making the noodles, I ended up making 𝐂𝐻𝐿 that we put into containers and we had for lunch for the next couple days. I talked about these in the last video also, but I remade those bagels again with the cottage cheese this time. Last time I made it with Greek yogurt, but I needed to make some more to put on the blog for some pictures, and we were going to use part of them for the next day. We will often use bagels as the bread for making like breakfast sandwiches. So egg and ham sandwiches we will have often. And these bagels are perfect. They only take 5 minutes to make, and then you put them in the oven to cook. It was Valentine's Day and we both were under the weather and not feeling great with a little bit of an appetite. And for the first time, we didn't do chocolate fondue at all this year. Even though I had all the things to make it, we just didn't feel like it. But we still did our cheese fondue, and we had that for dinner with a bunch of veggies. We used those bagels that I made for the bread for it. And then we had carrots and celery and green apples. And that was all we had for Valentine's Day. But it was so nice that we have a family tradition that it's really just low-key at home, and I didn't have to worry about getting dressed up and going to be at a restaurant, and nobody was disappointed. So we got to do our tradition and just take it easy. Now you would say I am hashtag not a morning person. I am such a night owl, but I do like breakfast items. We just normally have them at dinner time if they're hard to make, and I have been craving biscuits and gravy for like 2 weeks. So I made some sausage gravy, and I actually had it with hash browns instead of biscuits. I was able to use up some hash browns that I had in the pantry because I'm still trying to downsize the pantry before we move. So with the hash browns and gravy, I also ate an egg, and I made sure to eat the egg before I started on the hash browns and gravy because having that protein hit my system first, it doesn't give me a glucose spike that I would have if I start it with the carbs. On this night, we kept it pretty easy and we just had Cobb salad. We had some hard-boiled eggs in the refrigerator and we used some chicken that we had and then just loaded it up with some veggies. But I did, when I was cleaning out my refrigerator, realized I had a jar of shredded cheese that got pushed to the back of the refrigerator that had been there for like over a month, and the little bit of cheese that was left in the jar was still perfect because I stored it in a glass jar with the metal lid. If you'd like to learn more about saving dairy items for longer, we have a video on keeping shredded cheese. We ended up having homemade tomato soup for dinner. I love making this just with diced tomatoes. You can make homemade soup really easily and you can add better broth into it that's homemade, and that way you have more nutrients in your soup than just opening up a can. But we had grilled cheese sandwiches with this. It sounded really comforting, and I love having goldfish with my tomato soup. We have a recipe on how to make allergy-friendly, dye-free goldfish, and it's on the blog. And making the tomato soup, I got to use my brand new immersion blender. I had a wedding gift of an immersion blender 27 years ago, and it's finally bit the dust and I finally replaced it. And I was so happy to be able to get a immersion blender that was stainless steel, so when I'm doing tomato stuff, it doesn't stain the blender part of it. This night we had T-bone steaks and baked potatoes. I seared these in cast iron on the stove and then put them in the oven and had the baked potatoes cooking in the oven, so I didn't have to stand at the stove very long. But these steaks are some of the last ones we have left over from our last meat purchase, which was 2 years ago in February. And I am able to get meat every 2 years. One, because we have a freezer, and two is because I set aside out of our grocery budget $50 every month. So every 2 years we can purchase a half a beef. So we have a grocery budget of $135 per person. There are 2 of us here at the house, and so our grocery budget total is $270. So I just try to tuck a little bit of that away so I can make those larger purchases when I need to. This one's not a dinner, but I did it at dinner time. But if you didn't know, you can make steel cut oatmeal in a rice cooker. So it's just 1 cup of steel cut oats and 2 cups of water, and then just push the go button on your rice cooker and you can have steel cut oatmeal. And I divide those up into glass containers and put them in the refrigerator, and then I can have them in the mornings when I don't want to cook. And on the oatmeal, I sometimes will have smashed bananas and sometimes I will have chopped apples, just to give it a little bit of sweetness, and I love cinnamon on my oatmeal. If you watched the grocery haul video, you'll see I was talking about some chicken sausage that I got at Costco. This came in a package of 3 separate packages of 4. So I was able to use one of those packages for dinner that night and then put 2 more away in the freezer to use in the coming months. Will actually stay fresh for over a year in those airtight packages. So that $13 I spent on the sausages will make at least 3 meals. I made a chicken sausage and Orzo dish that we are going to be sharing in the next newsletter. So if you're not signed up and would like the recipe, make sure you're checking the newsletter link in the description. We had pork chops and butternut squash for dinner. I love just being able to rub it with some mustard and some seasoning, and it goes into the oven, and while it's cooking, I also had butternut squash in the oven, and that way everything was cooking at the same time and I could go do other things instead of worrying about dinner. And we had Friday night pizza night here at the house. I made pizza rolls. So I'm using the pizza crust recipe that we have on the blog. And then I just roll those up like cinnamon rolls and I put them in the oven. But before they go in the oven, I put a little bit of garlic butter on top of them and they are amazing. But I make sure when I put them in the oven that I do it on a pan that has a little bit of sides on it so they don't spread out and dirty my oven. These make, I think, 7 or 8. We had them for dinner and then I froze the rest in individual portions so Mike could have them at a later time for lunches. You might have heard me say that we want to move, and we know exactly where the area is that we want to move. And so on Saturday we went to go look at a house, and it wasn't the right one, but it was a 105-year-old farmhouse that we thought we would love, but found found out that the remodeled looking pictures in the ad wasn't as remodeled as we thought. And I definitely don't want to go through another kitchen remodel after just finishing ours here at this house. But we were gone about 18 hours that day, and we were able to go out for dinner with our family, and we had such a great time. I forgot to even take a picture, but I did get this one of the snow on the pass. Since we were gone the day before and I slept really late in on Sunday morning because we didn't get home until after 2 in the morning, I realized that I hadn't pulled anything out for dinner, but chili sounded so good to both of us, and we were debating about having a meatless chili with beans. I know that's controversial. Or just getting the ground hamburger out of the freezer. So I ended up getting the frozen brick out of the freezer and putting that frozen in the Instapot for about 20 minutes, and it defrosted and browned during that time. And while that was cooking in the Instapot, I chopped up the onions and peppers and started cooking those on the stove. So as soon as the meat was done, I was able to add that and add all the ingredients for the chili. And in about 20 minutes, we had dinner. And today, since we are filming all day and we're not filming a recipe video today, we are going to have a frozen chicken pot pie out of the freezer. I'm pulling that out to have for dinner. I made this a couple weeks ago and it was so good. This recipe is on the vlog. If you're interested in my tips on saving money on groceries, make sure that you're checking out the link in the description for the Zero Waste Produce Guide and our grocery planner. This is just one of the covers that is available. These are on a bundle deal, and there's also a savings code in the description. And we're going to keep putting these videos out about every 2 weeks as long as you guys are liking them and engaging with them, and we will keep doing these meals of what we've ate the last couple weeks.